This podcast is sponsored by nobody. Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, we are going to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Disney Sci-Fi classic Tron. I am going to be talking to Bonnie MacBird, a true Renaissance woman of the entertainment industry. She wrote the original story of Tron, but that's just one of many things that she's done. She also was the second assistant director on the First Nudie Musical, which was written and directed by Bruce Kimball, who I had on several months back. She's done a lot of different things. I mean, she's been an actress, a screenwriter, an author, a musician, a teacher. I mean, just so many different things. And it's going to be great to talk to her today. And it's going to be great to get the inside scoop on Tron and what the genesis of it was. It's probably the most unique science fiction movie ever made, with the whole video game craze that happened back in the early 80s at the time of Pac-Man and so forth. So it's going to be a great conversation, and see if she's got any novels coming out, or what she's currently writing. So yeah, here is my interview with Bonnie MacBird. Hey Bonnie, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good, thank you. Nice to be here.
Yes, this is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
My pleasure.
So, going back in time, you've done many things in show business. You've been an actor, writer, singer. You've done artwork, teaching. I mean, did you gravitate toward show business and creativity early on in your childhood?
Oh yeah, definitely. My mom was an artist, and my dad worked for the VA, but he was a kind of a his secret life, I guess, was very artistic. He was very musical and also artistic. So both of my parents, really encouraged me to draw, paint, act, do whatever, any of those things. And I did it a lot as a child. I was in the San Francisco Children's Opera as a little kid.
Wow. Yeah, I'm born and raised in San Francisco, in San Mateo.
Oh, really? Yeah, I grew up in South City.
Really? Wow. One of my last jobs before I was injured was working in South City.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you were injured. Sorry to hear that.
Oh, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this podcast.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes those life-changing things are, they seem awful at the time, but sometimes good things come of them. That certainly happened to me with my book series. My Sherlock Holmes series came out of recovering from cancer, actually.
Oh, I didn't even realize that you had cancer. Wow.
Yeah, quite a while ago. I'll fine now, but sometimes you get traumatic things. Sometimes can cause good shifts in you.
I agree. So, did you do school plays and community theater?
I did. Yes, as a kid growing up, I did that. I did it as a young child. I did community theater, musicals, and plays. And then in high school, we had a wonderful high school that kind of had a very strong music and theater department. So our music teacher he did a stage band, really, really good instrumental players. And they were good enough to play Leonard Bernstein music, which is tough to play. Yeah. And they used to win the four Western states of the in the jazz band category every year. So we had big shows. We had a big play and an even bigger musical in the spring. So I did all 4 years of that. And then I went on to major in music at university.
Mm-hmm. So you went to Stanford, right?
I did, yes.
Mm-hmm. You got a BA in music and MA in film. Did you run into anybody there that went on to become successful in the industry?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, actually, in the film business, Sigourney Weaver was 1 year ahead of me in school.
Oh.
And yeah, I didn't know her, but I met her much later, and she was at Stanford when I was there, but 1 year ahead of me. And of course, she certainly was pretty darn successful, I'd say.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Stanford spawned a lot of tech people, of course. My husband, who I met much later, not while I was at Stanford, but while I was at Stanford, he was actually teaching there. We didn't intersect at that time, but we were both there at the same time.
Yeah, I guess everything just comes together when it's supposed to.
If you're lucky. Yeah, it takes a little luck too.
I forgot to ask, did you also sing in your church choir?
No, I didn't. I wasn't in a church.
No.
Nope. But I did. I did do choir all through high school. Yeah, and actually in junior high, we had a really good teacher in junior high. Are you a singer too, Tommy?
I'm a karaoke singer. I can't sing. I can't sing at all, but I love making people uncomfortable.
Well, karaoke's the place for that, right?
Right.
It's a lot of fun too. It's just silly fun. I love it.
Yeah, I love singing karaoke. Did you also play classical guitar then?
I did. I started guitar as a kid. I was inspired by the Haley Mills movie. The Parent Trap. I don't know if you remember or saw that movie, but she played guitar and sang a song called "Let's Get Together." And of course, I was a little kid. I was maybe 10, I guess, and I saw that, and I had to be able to do that. I had to learn how to play that song, and so I got a guitar, and my parents took me to a teacher who said, "Okay, you can learn that song, but we're going to also learn, music notation and actual classical guitar as well, because if you have a grounding in that, you can play anything." So I bought that. So sure enough, I started studying classical guitar and got really into it, and then I was that was my job during high school. That's how I made some extra money. As I taught, I had a little guitar studio at my house, and I taught private students and had recitals for them and everything. It was fun.
Yeah. Were you surprised when a lot of the hard rock heavy metal guys were starting to incorporate classical guitar into heavy metal, like later on?
Well, that's interesting you should say that, because Alan and I have a favorite guitarist. His name is Key Marcello, and he played with, do you know who that is? He played with the band Europe.
I love Europe, but I've heard the name.
Yeah.
Sorry? I said I love the band Europe, and the Marcello. Yeah, I've heard the name.
Yeah. See, I think he was their second guitarist. He was fantastic, and he was classically trained, and he was a melodic metal player, and just probably the best of his type, of that kind of music. And he has a wonderful recording, which you can find on YouTube, I think. It's called The Flight of the Bumblebee. It's the classic Flight of the Bumblebee, classical music, played on the guitar at unbelievable speed. And the guy is so talented, and he's so musical, and I think that has to be from his classical training.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely check that out. The first guitarist, he was John Norum. He left right at the height of their success with the Final Countdown.
Yeah, and then Key Marcello came in, and he was pretty fantastic. And I have to tell you a funny story. So when my husband turned 50, I threw a surprise party for him.
Nice.
And he had been listening to a lot of MTV at the time, and he'd come across Key Marcello's playing and was a huge, huge fan of Europe, but especially of Key's playing, because Alan is a guitarist. And so, as a surprise for him, I got Key Marcello to come play at his birthday party, and he didn't know this was happening. So, we had sit-down meal, and then all of a sudden we announced this thing, and here comes Key. But a couple other members of Europe were in LA at the time also, and they just joined him anyway for fun. And they just did this impromptu concert, and Key has now become a really good friend of ours. He's a really smart, wonderful guy.
Nice.
In fact, he just I think he's just done a comeback album just now, actually. And he just did the recording of the videos for it.
Oh, cool. Have you ever met the lead singer, Joey Tempest?
Yes, a long time ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got such a great voice. They're such an underrated band. They get so pigeonholed because of the Final Countdown, but they got so many great songs.
They really, really do. Yeah, they're a great band. I love them, and yeah, very, very musical.
So after Stanford, did you move to LA right after that?
Yes, I married my first husband, and I had to wait for him to finish his PhD. So I took a job up in near Stanford in San Jose. I took a job, and I just finished my master's in film, so I got a job at a little film company there, and I produced a documentary um, about medical researchers doing cutting edge stuff. But my thesis film was also was about teaching children to read using a talking computer, and that also was about science. And it predated Tron and meeting my husband, so I'd been really interested in computers for a long, long time. And while I was an undergrad at Stanford, I took a programming course from Donald Knuth, who's like one of the leading lights of computers. And I mean, that's sort of one of the benefits of these universities is you can take something 101 from like the person that invented it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so similarly, there was a great psychology teacher that I just studied with. But anyway, Donald Knuth, I took programming because I was really into that, and I just so enjoyed it. And then my thesis film was on a new program that was developed and being tried out in a local school, and there was little kids sitting at computers learning to read and they had big earphones on because it was back then and the technology was kind of kludgy, but they had these earphones and they'd sit at these terminals and that they would get instructions in the earphones and they would type in the answers and then they would be given feedback, like fantastic or try again or things like that. They would hear back. And then the thing was beautifully programmed, so it would loop them back to repeat or to do more work on things that they kept missing, or would put them forward when they could do it. And it was just kind of a subtle, nice thing, and the kids loved this thing. I mean, they ran into the room to do this stuff, and so it was very charming, and it was very early, computer-aided instruction, and very nice design. It was written by it was designed by a guy who later went on to be the head of all of UC campuses, Richard Atkinson. Mm-hmm. So it was quite fun. So I was doing computer stuff long before Tron and long before meeting my husband.
Long before the internet, too.
Yes, the internet was not around yet. Definitely was not there yet. Yeah.
Yeah, when I think of a talking computer, I think of Electric Dreams. Do you remember that movie?
No, wait, I'm trying to think. No, remind me. I'm blanking on that one.
I forget the actor's name, but he was a young guy. He has this talking computer that's kind of evil, and Virginia Madsen played his girlfriend, and Human League did the theme song to the movie. And I saw a concert of them doing the theme song for the encore. I was like, I thought that was pretty cool, that they're doing theme songs of this cult movie, that most of the people in the world forgot,
That's funny, yeah. Yeah, there's been some interesting pairings of music. I thought Wendy Carlos did a wonderful job on Tron.
Yeah. Is it so? When you got to LA, is that when you started acting training with Daryl Hickman?
How do you know all this?
I did my research.
You sure did. I don't know where this is on the internet. Yeah, I did. I studied with Daryl. Not right away, actually. I came to LA, and when I first moved to LA, I wanted to be I thought I wanted to be a producer, because I had this notion of a producer being a very creative job, but it isn't really. But so I applied to all the studios to get in as a reader, to go through the kind of literary track. And then I also answered an ad in Variety to be a production assistant on a feature film, because then I was also going to try the producing, the production track, because there's kind of two tracks that can lead you to being a producer. So I was pursuing both. Anyway, I got this gig as what I thought was a production assistant and I was applying to a place called the First Musical Company. Mm-hmm. So I show up there for the interview, and there's the sign outside the office that says the First Nudie Musical
Yeah.
company. It's like they left that word out of the ad. I'm like, is this a porn film?
Yeah.
So I asked them that. I said, is this porn? And they said, not at all. I said, it's a musical, and it's kind of about the porn industry, but it is not a porn film at all. It's a funny. I said, let me see the script. So they handed me the script, and I just sat there and read it. And it was hilarious. It was really funny. Okay, I'd be interested in this. So I applied, and I got the job. And first day, the first assistant director was fired, and the second became the first. And so I was a production assistant. I became the second AD on this film.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for this crazy low budget movie. And then I realized from that I did not want to go up the production track, that I hated this. Because it was a challenge, but the challenges were things like get lunch for $40 in a half an hour. Things like that.
Yeah.
And, these and it's like, okay, no, I don't want to do this. So I did it, but, it wasn't my cup of tea. So then I got a job at Universal.
Yep.
I got hired by the story department to be the assistant to the head of the story department, and I started reading scripts, and I was really good at it. So in about 6 months, I was the reader for the head of all production at the studio.
Yep.
And I became his story editor. And I started working. They started asking me to read all the drafts of all the scripts that were in development at the studio. So I would read every draft of everything in development and do notes. And I was still quite young and female, and it was an extremely, well, it still is male-dominated business, but it was even more so then.
Yeah.
So I was kind of a silent partner. So I would read these things and do these notes, and then the guy I worked for would read the notes in the meeting as though they were his notes. And this happened, several years, and I was like, ah. And it was there that I met Steven Lisberger, because he'd come to pitch a project to one of the people I was working with, and we kind of hit it off, and then I left Universal to go work on Tron.
Yeah. So when you were at Universal, I mean, that was a pretty interesting period of Universal. There's a lot of experimental ideas going on, and music was so popular, they were jumping on the bandwagon with FM and Car Wash and The Wiz, Sgt. Pepper's.
Yep.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, I worked on Car Wash and and the Blues Brothers and all that stuff. Yeah, they were. It was pretty crazy. I have a funny story about The Wiz.
Okay.
So. We would laugh sometimes about how functionally illiterate certain people who would come to the studio pitching ideas.
Right. And
so this one guy comes in after The Wiz, right? Mm-hmm. And The Wiz is a hit, it's a pretty good hit. And he goes, I'd like to do a new version of The Wiz, only white. and we all sort of looked at him like, I think that's been done.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
It's just like he did not even realize that The Wiz was based on The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
It was like, oh please. Anyway, so sometimes you get these very crazy pitches, and funny stuff happen. But yeah.
Yeah, there was Smokey and the Bandit.
I'd like to do.
Yeah.
Yep, I worked on Smokey and the Bandit. I worked on that one as well. So I didn't really get to know the stars of these movies. I was working on the scripts before the movie was shot, so I was kind of behind the scenes doing story work. But I got to say that the 4 years there, I probably read 1,000 scripts at least.
Yeah.
Because I was a kind of workaholic and still am, and I would read 3 or 4 a day, and on the weekend another 10, and so I would be covering the top end of the stuff that was submitted to the studio, as well as doing the notes on the stuff in development. So I just was a reading fiend, and I got to think that has really served me in good stead in terms of my own writing later on.
Yeah. God, yeah, there was a lot of good stuff being made at Universal during that period.
Yes, there really was. You know your movie history, don't you?
Yeah. Slapshot, The Sentinel. I talked to Jeffrey Convitz about a year or two ago. His wife is a friend of mine, and my favorite comedy of all time, Animal House.
Oh yeah, of course. Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
Animal House.
yeah. That Universal took a real chance with that movie.
Yeah. Now, here's another funny story about Universal at that time.
Hmm.
So, George Lucas, of course, had done American Graffiti,
Right,
and that was a sleeper hit
right,
for the studio, and it kind of made Ned Tannen, who then became the head of production, and I was working for him directly
right.
during my stay there, and but then George came to Ned and said. So they all said, "Well, what do you want to do now?" And he said, "I want to do this thing." And he described Star Wars, and they were like, "Space opera, cowboys in space? No." They just said, no, we're not doing that. No, nobody wants to see stuff in space. It always tanks. We're not doing it. And so, of course, he took it. I guess it was to Paramount, and they said, "Okay, fine, we won't do it here." So, flash forward to Star Wars is now complete in the can, and so there's a preview of it,
Right.
and I attended with Ned. And we're sitting in the little screening room with, maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 people. Thing plays, the thing stops, the lights go up, and Ned is white. He's like, shit. Because, oops, everybody in the room was like, "Oh my God, I wish I'd made this movie. This is like the best thing I've seen in ages. Oh my God." Everybody in the room knew that this was giant. That this thing was going to be off the charts. And he was like, "Oops." Yeah, that was probably one of the bigger mistakes that a studio has made.
Yeah, which is the reason why they ended up doing Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, and those were both failures.
Yep. Yeah, you can't make them. Yeah, which just goes to show it's really not the idea; it's the person. You back
Right.
the person because it's the talent. Because anything. Ideas are cheap. It's execution that is so rare and impossible to do well. I mean, that's what's the whole key of it is the person. You back the person. My husband, who's done a lot of computer work and over the years,
Mm-hmm.
says the same thing, and it's true in computer science as well. You put your money behind the person.
Absolutely. So with the First Nudie Musical, though, I mean, was there any of the humor in that personally offended you or made you uncomfortable?
Okay, well, that's one of those questions that's like a trick question because, I mean, in current days, it's
Yeah.
it's very sexist and blah blah, etc.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's a parody and it's really funny. And Cindy Williams, by the way, starred in it.
Right.
And not nude, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so no is the answer. Not really. I mean, it's not some. So I was, as a second AD, I had to. One of my jobs was to. There were girls that were dancing that were nude in it, and they all did that because they got their SAG cards. They were new to the industry, and they wanted to they got their SAG cards by doing that.
Yeah.
They knew what they were choosing. I mean, it's not, etc. And it was a low budget film, and it was actually quite fun and pleasant on the set. And the guy who did it was very funny. The thing was funny. It's a comedy, and do I care that there's nudity in it? No.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't. And it is making fun of the porn industry. It wasn't. It certainly was not glamorizing it.
No.
So no, I don't have any big qualms about that. In fact, I'm currently living in London, and and my first husband is French, and I have to say that in Europe and England, the whole view of the Puritanism in America is kind of they kind of laugh at us, to be honest.
Oh, I know.
It's just so crazy because you think people get so alarmed and offended at nudity, but they're happy to see people shoot each other on screen, or or glorify instant gratification in various ways, and it's just kind of morally a little bit crazy, I think. So no, the answer is no.
Oh yeah, I used to watch the show on HBO called Shock TV, where you see all this racy stuff that they were doing on television, with nudity and stuff. It's like, oh my God, you could get arrested doing that out here,
Well, it's just a very different approach. I mean, I don't seek out to nude
Yeah,
films or anything like this, and I certainly don't approve really of the porn industry. But that isn't what that show was, and so I don't know. I just doesn't bother me. I had a
yeah.
lot of fun working on it, and I learned quite a bit about production, and so
Yeah, I talked to Bruce recently. That guy is such a gentleman. I liked him.
Bruce Kimmel.
Yeah.
He's a very nice man, a very smart man. Yeah, he was a pleasure to work with. A really nice man.
So what's the genesis of Tron? Like, how did you come up with that amazing story?
Well, Tron came about. Steven Lisberger came to the studio, and he was brought in on a project called Lightning for a producer there was a man named Jennings Lang who had a very unique position at the studio. He was an executive, but he was also a producer. There was nobody else with that designation.
Yeah.
And he produced, he was the guy who invented Sense Around, and he was the disaster movie king. He sort of invented the genre.
Huh.
And so he was looking to do the next one. He wanted to do something called Lightning, but he didn't have a story or anything. He just had this concept. He wanted to flash up I don't know what he wanted to do, something crazy and disaster-ish. And so he heard about this young animator out of Boston, and Stephen had a little animation studio in Boston with some very talented folks in it. And Stephen came out to LA and pitched an idea of how he would do a lightning effect and have something exciting happen. And Jennings liked it, and Stephen was a really good at meetings. he had a special skill for that. And Jennings liked what he heard, and he brought Stephen in and said, okay, well, that sounds like a good effect, but you actually need a story. And Stephen tried to come up with a story, and it was terrible. And Jennings said, work with Bonnie. She knows story. You two, you go off. He has those effects. She has the story. Go do something. So he and I went off and put together a proposal, kind of an outline. And I made up a story, and he had great ideas about key moments in it for big effects and stuff. So we had a good working relationship, and this was kind of a good combination of skills. So that project actually never happened, but we enjoyed working together. So I was at that time done with Universal. I've been doing that for 4 years, and I kind of wanted to do something else. Mm-hmm. So I left the studio to while we were working on this other, we came up with 2 other ideas. One of them was Tron. Yeah. And the other one was something that didn't ever see the light of day. But Tron came about because Stephen had done an advertisement. Commercial for a radio station, but it was a TV commercial for a radio station, and he created an animation that looked basically like the Michelin Man, only backlit and done in neon, and a little animated figure, and he called that animated figure Tron. And I forget exactly the commercial, but it's something like he twirled around and then he landed on a record and played it, or I can't. But this little figure was was called Tron.
Yeah.
So he said, I want to make a whole movie about this character. And I said, well, what is it? Who is it? It's like, I don't know. It's just Tron. So I was like, okay. So I'm your person. I can come up with like a character and a story. And then we decided that video games were huge at the time, and Stephen said, I want this guy to be a video game warrior. I said, okay.
Yeah.
And that's all he had. It was Tron, this kind of look and the concept of video game warrior. So then I went to work and started creating that, and I started researching about what's actually in computers. Now, you've got to remember that I already was interested in computers from before and had done some programming, and I had some clue about what was in a computer. And there was, at that time, this is kind of fun, there was one computer store in all of LA, and it was in Santa Monica on a side street, and it was a homebrew store where you would buy components to put together your own homemade computers and stuff. So they had all these components, and they had a couple of total nerds and talking to you about it. And then they had some books, and I read Stuart Brand's book, Computer Lib. Mm-hmm. And there I read about Alan Kay. And so I read this book, and I thought, okay, well, let's interview some people that are doing cutting edge stuff, and let's see what's inside current computers and what's going on with them. Let's make this be real. Let's have, whatever is going on inside a computer. Let's be, have it be science fiction, not total fantasy.
Yeah.
So I arranged a trip up to what was going to become, but wasn't yet, Silicon Valley.
Right.
And we interviewed several people, and I can't remember who they all are, but Alan was the last one of the day. And everybody else said, oh, you're going to love Alan Kay. Wait till you meet Alan Kay. He's going to love this project. He's going to love you. And of course, we've been married for 40 years now. So yes, he did love me. But anyway, so we went to visit Xerox PARC, and there was Alan Kay, and he talked to us then for 4 hours. And Stephen and I and a third person who was working with us at the time sat in Alan's office. Mm-hmm. And Alan regaled us about the connections between computers and programming and education and theater and music and literacy and history and psychology. And he just he wove this incredible fabric of connections, and also painted a picture of what was inside a computer and what they were trying to do with computers. And also he gave us a demo of what was at Xerox PARC. Now, what's interesting about that is that demo was almost the identical one that Steve Jobs got within the month.
Right.
Same month. And so it was really cutting edge stuff, because there's a windows, overlapping windows, a mouse. This hadn't been done before. It was a networked computer, and there was laser printing down the hall. In fact, to this day, the laser printing isn't as fast as what they had at Xerox PARC. Right. In fact, a lot of the things are not as good as what they had at Xerox PARC right then. Yeah. So anyway, we connected with Alan in a big way, and he got very interested in the project, so he'd love to work on it, and we hired him as the technical consultant. So I started working with him once a week. Most of the time he flew down to LA. And also I ended up inputting my script as I worked on it into a TTY machine. And that TTY machine took that data and sent it up to Xerox PARC, where he loaded it into the Alto computer. The Alto is the precursor to the Mac.
Right.
It's the thing that Steve had seen. And so we loaded all of the script that I was writing into that computer. And then I went up there and actually edited the script on the Alto. And I'm not sure, but I think that makes me the first screenwriter to ever do a screenplay on a computer, and certainly on any kind of WYSIWYG computer where you're actually seeing the pages and editing right on it. So that was kind of a trip and really a lot of fun. So I worked on the thing for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then, unfortunately for me, Stephen had a partner named Donald Kushner who went and made a deal at Disney without me. And that didn't fly too well with me, as one can well imagine. Yeah. And I had a contract, and so at one point I had the power. I could have pulled the plug on the entire project, and then I thought, okay, I don't really want to do that. And then I was offered to stay on as an associate producer, and it's like, no. At that point, Steve was already taking the script and surgically removing all the humor out of it, and also most of the science as well. And I'm like, okay, you're just shredding this work, and I don't like what you're doing with it, and I don't like the way it's going. Now, on the other hand, he retained his brilliance about the visuals. He was always incredibly gifted about that, and that stuff is one of the things that makes Tron very special. But as far as I was concerned, the script was being eviscerated, and I was not happy. So I allowed them to buy me out of the project, and I still own a piece of Tron.
That's good.
And I still, yeah, I mean, I worked on it for 2 years, and then unfortunately, for whatever his reasons are, Stephen and has in the ensuing years, all of his interviews have been as though this was entirely his movie, his idea, and
Yeah.
he never even mentions me. Like he never mentions me. And somebody wrote a book about the making of Tron. They never interviewed me. They weren't even told about me.
Oh.
And I'm like, I originated this thing with Steven, but the story and the characters were all mine. He had a video game warrior named Tron, and I came up literally with everything else. So
Yeah.
so it was quite painful, frankly. And for a long time I didn't talk about it, just because I hate people that go on and on about how they've been wronged in Hollywood, because if you've worked in Hollywood, you've been wronged in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's like a given. It's not a new sob story. But this was a particularly egregious one, and I was much gratified when many years later the Writers Guild kind of sanctioned Donald Kushner for doing some awful things to writers. So it was just the nature of the beast, and I was hurt because Stephen and I had originally had a good relationship, and I worked on the thing for 2 years. So I knew what the movie could have been, and I do like many things about it. But I would have loved to seen the actual science stuff kind of stay underlaying it, because although it's a cult film now, it would have been an uber cult film had that stuff stayed in. But a lot of people since then. I've gone on to write a bunch of other stuff, and since then when I was teaching at UCLA Extension, I was teaching screenwriting for 11 years there. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of students come up and say to me that that movie inspired them to go into computer science or go into whatever programming and so forth, and so I'm thrilled about that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, my parents took my brother to see the movie the summer before I was born. He was 8 years old, and they all walked out of the theater thinking that they were on acid because they they saw blue for quite a while.
That was Stephen's gift. That was one of his gifts, was visual tripping, basically. Yeah, he was very good at that.
Yeah, well, I guess karma came back to him because aside from this movie and Tron 2.0, the only other thing he did was he did this movie with John Cusack called Hot Pursuit about 5 years.
I saw it.
Yeah, about 5 years later. Yeah, so it wasn't a great movie, but I guess karma does come back. So.
Well, I don't wish ill on anybody, but it was not a fun experience for me, and it took me a while. It actually took me a while to recover from it, and because I'd already been in Hollywood for a number of years, and I'd been working at Universal, Universal was known as the most cutthroat place to work in the whole city, and I'd managed to survive there, and more or less with all my limbs attached, and did good work there, and had friends there, and so I felt that I was pretty prepared for anything that could be thrown at me, but this was so personal because I loved this movie. I loved what I was working on, and I invested quite a bit of myself into it. So it was a little bigger of a deal for me to have it wrenched away like that. But I got over it. Yeah. And Alan and I hit it off, and we've been married for 40 years now. We've been together 40 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, this was a weird time for Disney because just about everything they were releasing was not doing well. They had the Black Hole and Condor Man and the Devil and Max Devlin and lots of stuff that just didn't do well because this was pre-Michael Eisner.
Yeah, they took a few wrong turns, and I remember before I separated from them in that movie, I attended a meeting about the Tron. Yeah. And by that time, literally, I wrote. Basically, I should mention this, that I wrote this movie for Robin Williams. I had Robin Williams in my head as the guy who jumps inside the computer. Oh. And although I loved, I love what was done, I still had a funnier, zanier kind of tone to the thing that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
A little, and I mean, Jeff Bridges is a fabulous actor, and he did a beautiful job. But by the time I had the meeting with Disney, Stephen had already put 2 other writers on the script, and they basically took out all the laughs. I called them surgically excised the humor and most of the science. And so I'm thinking, and they left this kind of skeletal thing that was a plot that I wrote, but not all the texture and the humor and the subtlety and the layers of stuff that that people would get over the years. And also I felt like the heart was out of it. And in its place came this, what I thought was kind of a pedantic and pseudo-religious bunch of stuff. And so I was not happy, to say the least. So I sat in this meeting, and they were talking about the thing. And at one point, Tom Wilhite kind of jokingly said, maybe we could make it into a comedy. And I'm thinking, like, well, it was a comedy. and it was a lot of things that it isn't now. So what a shame, because I figured, a guy shoots himself inside a computer and then Wizard of Oz has to get home. This had better be funny. Anyway, I had actually seen Robin before he hit it big, before Mork and Mindy. Mm-hmm. I saw him because I was covering comedy for the Universal Studios. That's one of the things I did for them, is I covered the comedy scene. And I saw him play at a little club, and I was like, oh my God, this man is genius. And I immediately tried to get him his first deal at Universal. I tried so hard, and I wasn't able to make it happen. And that was one of the reasons I left the studio, because I was like, if you're not listening to me about Robin, I'm not going to come to you with anybody better than this. Why have me cover comedy, and I come and bring you this guy, and you're not listening to me? You're not going to do better than this, seriously. And so they're not listening. So that was another reason I left. I thought, I'm gonna take this idea, and I had immediately an idea that, okay, Tron, this video game warrior, is going to intersect with Robin Williams in some way. And so anyway, so I wrote the thing with him in mind. Mm-hmm. As this kind of manic pizza delivery boy who comes into an AI lab, the AI lab based on all the stuff I'd researched up in Stanford. And, he's kind of ADD, and he's hands on everything, and he's touching everything, and they have a matter transfer experiment going on, and he aims it in the wrong direction and shoots himself inside the thing. But he's Robin Williams as a pizza delivery boy, so which is a bit different. But the rest of the plot was actually rather similar. Anyway, so I wanted Robin for this, and anyway, so it was kind of a different concept. But like I said, I really liked Jeff Bridges, and he did a beautiful job, and the visuals were great, and the music was great. I mean, lots of nice things happened.
Yeah, I've talked to Cindy Morgan, Dan Shore, and Jack Bostwick. They all love their association with the movie. They do the Comic Cons and all of that.
Yep. Yeah, well, I'm never at those, because nobody knows I even did this.
Well, I do.
I swear, well, I appreciate that, because, like I said, for some reason, they saw fit to, do all these interviews and all these things and never mention me once. I don't know what, how angry must he have been, or I don't know what his deal was, why he would do that. But, maybe he needed everybody to think it was the product of a single Stephen. I don't know I have no idea. But it's not the way I would do something like that. So
yeah. So as an actor, you've done a lot of theater, but did you ever audition for any TV or movies back in LA?
Yeah, I did. I was mainly a theater actor, and that was incredibly fun for me. It's kind of a different, certainly a different animal. But I did. I got my SAG card, and I did a little bit of film work, not much. And I got my SAG card, and I auditioned and did a few things, but nothing to write home about. But my main thing was theater, and I studied Shakespeare, and was affiliated with 3 different theater groups in LA, and still do theater, so it's a lot of fun.
Nice. You studied improv at the Groundlings. Who was there when you were there?
Oh gosh, who was there?
I've talked to all the original Groundlings. They're all friends of mine.
Oh, are they? I'm trying to
Yeah,
remember. Yeah, I can't remember now. I'm so sorry.
it's okay.
Probably somebody famous, but I'm just blanking. I can't remember. It was let's see. I think it was their. No. Oh, I also did Second City. You know, it was Second City I'm thinking of.
Right.
I took improv from Second City and also the Groundlings. I can't remember. To be honest, I can't remember. But I loved doing that.
Like,
That was tremendous.
like was it the Pee Wee Herman era?
I think it was before that. I'm not sure. It would have been. Let's see. It would have been around 78.
Okay. Yeah, that was the era. Yeah, because there was Lynn Stewart and John Paragon and a lot of people that were there.
Well, if you name more, those names are not ringing a bell. Because I'm thinking 78, 79. Let's see. Yeah, 79, 80, right in there.
There's Bridget Sienna was there. John Moody.
I mean, I just took the beginning classes, so I wasn't in the troupe,
Right.
like the performing troupe.
Right.
I was taking classes from them. So, I can't remember who the teachers were, but I loved it. Yeah.
So you mentioned before about surviving cancer. That's what made you get into novel writing?
Well, it just, actually what it was, how these sort of life-changing moments. I mean, you said you had an injury, I guess.
I had a really bad
Right.
car accident, and I was in a coma.
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how you felt coming out of it, but I felt after my cancer, which was completely healed, and I don't have it at all now. So, but I felt it was a near miss. Like dodging a bullet. I guess you might have felt that way yourself
Oh yeah.
when you recovered. And I felt like, okay, life is really finite, and what's my bucket list? And I really don't have much of a bucket list. Didn't then. I usually do what I want to do, so I don't accrue a long bucket list. And I thought, okay, there's one thing though, and that thing is I really want to write a novel, and I want to get it out there. So I decided I would write a novel, and no matter what happened, I would self-publish it. I would get it out there because that part was in my control, and I would write it and get it out. So then I thought, well, what do I want to write about? What novel? And I've always, I had written another novel before that, which I got an agent, but she didn't sell it, and then I just put it in a drawer. And it was a murder mystery, and I've always liked murder mysteries, so I knew I was going to write a mystery. And then I've been in love with Sherlock Holmes since I was 10. So I just decided I'm going to do a Sherlock Holmes. I'm going to try to do it in the style of the originals, except that instead of a short story or novella, it's going to be a novel. And then I started to think, what would that be like? And write down kind of the challenges of that. And I like writing to form. I like writing in verse. I like writing sonnets. I like writing to form. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, this is going to be a real challenge. So this will be fun. So I sat down on Christmas Day and did a NaNoWriMo on my own 30 days. And in 30 days, I knocked out a very, very early first draft of the whole thing at 50,000 words. And then I spent a year revising it, thinking that I was going to self-publish. And meanwhile, I'm designing a cover and, all this stuff. And I thought, well, I'll just try to get an agent. So I got an agent, and then I should try to sell it. And boom, HarperCollins bought it. So I'm like, yes. So that was a huge, huge thrill for me. And then they turned it into a 3-book deal and then a 5-book deal.
Wow. Is there anything you're currently working on?
Yeah, I'm just finishing up number 5. And there's one more actually after this, because number 5 ended up being a novella, a special, kind of a special for a different, it's going to be a Christmas novella out this coming Christmas. And then after that, I have one more novel to do. And then I pitched them a different series, which I may be working on. I hope they're interested. So that's what I'm doing. And I really enjoy novel writing. I like the independence of it. And, I like the fact that the interesting thing about writing screenplay writing has very much helped my novel writing because I think I have a strong sense of pace and structure, and there's a lot of dialogue in my work. And there's a lot of dialogue in Arthur Conan Doyle's original Sherlock Holmes stories. He wrote much more dialogue than other writers of his era. And so I love writing dialogue as a screenwriter, of course, and actor and so forth. That's just natural for me. So I love writing. I love writing these. I love living in the Victorian era and just kind of, I love London. So the whole thing's a really nice fit.
Nice. Yeah, but when you were teaching screenwriting, did you get a satisfaction teaching that you didn't get from actually doing it? From actually writing?
I wouldn't exactly put it that way. I got a different satisfaction, I would say. I enjoyed writing. I enjoy seeing the work being performed. That is a huge satisfaction. Especially I did that a lot in theater. In the theater companies I was in, I was always writing plays and stuff. But the teaching is another whole thing. And teaching itself is a very complicated skill. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed it. When I decided to teach screenwriting, I took a year to design my class. Mm-hmm. And I studied adult learning, how best to facilitate adult learning. And I also took advice and inspiration from 3 genius teachers that I had had.
Right.
And one of them was an acting teacher, and one of them is Betty Edwards, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, and the third one was Tim Gallwey, who wrote The Inner Game of Tennis. But all of them had a common theme, which is how do you get a potential creative person to get out of their own way to do their best work. Right. You know, what's in the way of doing great work? Why do people write bad scripts? Why do people, make bad movies? Like, how do you teach somebody to do really good work? It's not just get it done, but do good work. So that was a really worthy challenge. And I basically, for several years, that's just all I did is, I first designed that class and then I taught it. And, when I teach, it's a full-time gig for me because I demand a huge amount of work from my students, and then I actually read all their work and comment on it. So it's a very work-intensive gig the way I do it, and it's very effective, and I love doing it. I really love doing it.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, some people don't have the patience for it, but others, I mean, they can it's like a second language to them, and they can learn things that they didn't even know that they knew, Exactly.
Yes, that's exactly right. You learn your own thing better by teaching it. And so I would put that 11 years of teaching writing as massively improving my own writing and my own process as well, because part of the thing I taught was process, because that's one of the things that most writers fail at. That's why writers fail, is they don't have process. They start many things and don't finish, then they lose their courage, but they also don't have the craft to pull out of the problems that arise when you're writing, because they do, and for everyone, even the pros. And so I think teaching is kind of a calling, actually, and I just loved it so much. I really loved it. So I anticipate there'll be more teaching in my future.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do you ever plan on going back to it?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, definitely. And also, like doing theater, it's teaching fulfills for me a social aspect that is missing when I just sit alone in my room and write all the time. Especially during the pandemic, I don't see anybody.
Yeah, how's the COVID situation over there?
It's pretty bad right now.
Yeah. I could just imagine, over there, especially with all the smog that happens in London,
It's not really worse in the Bay Area. It's kind of similar, actually. In fact, having grown up in the fog belt of the San Francisco area, the weather here is almost identical, actually.
That's interesting. I plan on going to England someday. That was like one of my bucket list goals after the accident. Me and my mom wanted to go visit Europe, especially Italy, because we're half Italian. And
Yeah.
I hope to do that the next few years if everything can get it under control, you know.
Yeah, well, Italy's so fabulous. I'm sure you'll have a really good time. Italy and England are so different from each other, but also so delightful, both of them.
Yeah. So, any other upcoming projects?
Well, right now I'm just working on this book, and I have another book planned. I'd started the other book, but then I got pulled off to do this Christmas thing, and then trying to think what else. No, there's probably going to be some theater. I did last year. A friend of mine did a did a production, a Zoom production of all the works of Shakespeare in the order that they were probably written. And so I was in a couple of those shows. And then last January, I produced a Zoom production of, I did a theater adaptation of The Blue Carbuncle, one of the original Christmas story by Conan Doyle. So I produced that. And then I wrote a Gilbert and Sullivan parody song for Holmes and Watson to sing, and I produced that. And so those have all been on Zoom, but I miss doing that stuff. So that probably I've been feeling a pull to get into doing some more theater.
What's the British theater like opposed to American theater?
Well, I haven't worked on stage in the British theater other than I actually was a member of another group that did Shakespeare the year before also. So we did readings and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's a different, it's, they've got an extremely vibrant community here, and the training here is top notch. So people who have had the British training are incredibly versatile, and in some ways more so than the people who have received the common American training. But I really shouldn't generalize because it's not true everywhere. But I'm very stimulated by the British tradition in theater, which is kind of the opposite of method acting. but some of them are getting into method acting now, so it's changing. But it's quite fun.
That's awesome.
But there's a nice what I find a stimulating and inspiring tradition of concentrating on the voice and the movement and the they work from the externals toward the internals. So they start with the walk and the gestures and the voice, and then from that they go in toward what the character feels and who the character is. Whereas I'm oversimplifying hugely, by the way, and it's also no longer completely true, but it used to be that the Americans' technique was to start with who is this character and how's it like me? Mm-hmm. How do I find myself in this character? And then they move out to how the person looks and appears and so forth. So, but either direction can work. It's just that I just really like the lingo here and stuff. I studied one summer I studied Shakespeare at Oxford for a summer, and then I also took Shakespeare training at Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, Massachusetts, which is run by an English woman named Tina Packer. So I've had some of that training, a little bit of it.
Nice. Wow, you're so versatile in what you do, and you're so hardworking. Your husband's a very lucky guy.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I feel like I'm the lucky one. He's a pretty amazing person himself. And, yeah.
So really quickly, there's this secret silly game that I like to play with guests. This is a series of silly slumber party questions. No win or lose, just pure fun. And how the game works is I ask you the question, you answer it, and then you ask me the exact same question, and I answer it.
Okay.
And feel free to comment on answers.
Okay.
Bonnie, are you ticklish?
Not very. Okay, are you ticklish?
Yes, I am. I've been known to hit people in the groin without warning. I'm so ticklish.
Oh, okay.
What's your favorite part of the body? It could be anything.
Oh gosh. Eyes.
Eyes, that's a popular one.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the eyes because of what I can do with them, but also what I can read in them and others.
Yeah.
How about you?
The belly button.
Why?
I had a girlfriend when I was 6. She had a really cute belly button, and like she's always been like the girl that got away because we were in school together all the way through junior high, and we both went through a lot in junior high, and then we went to different high schools, and I tried to get in touch with her about 15 years ago, and she was all fucked up on drugs, and it's always been a poignant thing for me. Every time, I see the belly button, I think of her.
Oh, too bad. That's sad.
Yeah. What color are your toenails painted?
They aren't. And how about you?
Mine are not painted right now, but last time they were a lavender color.
Oh, okay.
Uh, what would you say is your best personality trait?
Oh gosh, persistence.
I agree. You are persistent.
How about you?
I have empathy and I have no filter. It's a counterbalance.
Those are good though. Those are really good.
Yes, they are. And then my favorite question, is there a stinky smell that just makes you gag?
Let's see. Stinky smell. I'm not real fond of Chanel number 5. That's pretty bad. Like when you're in a theater and somebody near you is like reeking of it. It's pretty hard. How about you?
It's either farts or feet.
Oh, okay. Well, those are the classics.
Oh, yeah. But Chanel number 5, that's one of the best answers I've ever had, I swear.
Yeah. It's pretty intense, that stuff. I just don't like it, but
Well, Bonnie, I want to thank you so much for coming on, and I really appreciate you telling me the Tron stories, because you said that you had gone through a period where you didn't want to talk about it.
yeah, I did. I was pretty mad about it for a long time, and then I just it's water under the bridge, and I've moved on from there. I still am confounded why I would never treat anyone that way. So I still find it odd, but that's just the way it was.
Yes, and I have a feeling in the future you will be mentioned in more Tron-related stuff. At least I'll throw your name towards the convention circuit when I get involved.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice of you. Appreciate it. Anyway, so it's great talking to you, and thank you for this very fun interview.
My pleasure. You have yourself a great night over there, and please stay safe.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Bonnie MacBird. Ain't she a sweetheart? Oh, what a great, great lady. Very personable, approachable, and humble. All the old. I'm so glad that she's been married 40 years to a great guy, and he really is lucky to have her. She's just a Renaissance woman and a pioneer, and fuck Hollywood. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.